In Southern California, young people are using social media from a very young age. This includes blogs, wikis, social networking and bookmarking sites, file sharing with photos and video, games with live chat, and many other kinds of online literacy. As teachers, it's easy to see technology in the classroom merely as a presentation tool. But we also need to develop teaching strategies for how technology is used outside the classroom in hands-on social media situations, particularly for the teaching of writing. SCIWRITER aims to connect the everyday social media practices of students in their online personal lives to the conventions of academic literacy valued by their teachers. This potential synergy between technology and written composition is powerful because social media could capitalize on many aspects of good writing pedagogy: seeing writing as a public act, fostering awareness about audiences and conventions, participating actively in knowledge networks, and thinking critically about writing as both process and product.
A regional center would allow us to kind of get together periodically, either face-to-face, online, variety of different formats, to really begin to think critically, collaboratively, collectively about what our students are essentially already doing, which is writing their way through a variety of new communications technologies. Many times students who use these platforms don't necessarily think of what they do as writing work or as composing, whether they're using social networking programs or using text-heavy computer gaming MMOs and whatnot, but they're doing a lot of writing. And what a regional center would do is allow us to kind of, as pedagogues, as scholars, as researchers, as people invested in the teaching of writing or literacy development in general, it would allow us to kind of get together, talk about what we're seeing our students doing, talking about the variety of literacies that they're engaging in developing, and share information. But more importantly, it would allow us to educate each other about not only what we're seeing our students doing, but about our own experiments with this media and in thinking critically about it and the impact that it has on what we conceive of as literacy education, kind of critical literacy education. Sometimes we're going to be coming from very different class backgrounds. We're going to be serving very different student bodies across the socioeconomic spectra. And keeping in mind variable interests and abilities and access to technologies is also vitally important. The diversity of technologies that exist and through which students are composing and writing and thinking is something that we need to pay more attention to. There's not a technology that needs to be mastered. There are multiple technologies that are being used and reused and reinvented in their uses. So I think that a large consortium of people who are thinking about new media, who are thinking about writing and literacy and critical thinking in terms of new media, will allow us to see a variety of technologies in action and to think a little bit more capaciously about how we could use any number of different technologies, not a special hot technology, but a variety of technologies with our students to help them think a little bit more critically and help us think more critically about how communication is being shaped through those technologies.
At universities, we often get caught up in a cultural politics around prohibition. Some of those rules make a lot of sense, like telling students that they have to turn off their cell phones when they're in the classroom, or saying that they can't cut and paste passages from the internet into their essays. But there are a lot of conventions that actually aren't working, and it's often the instructors who are most willing to experiment with new technologies and with connecting to their students' social media practices who are finding a lot of success in their teaching right now. And students are getting more out of it as well because it's the writing outside the classroom and outside the formal learning situation that is often the writing that students value most. It's the writing that they see as most important to them in their identities as writers. So this is an opportunity to take advantage of writing that really matters to students. Writing that they see as public writing, writing that they're willing to revise, writing that they're willing to take responsibility for, and writing that they're really seeing as formative in a lot of important ways.
One of the great things about living in Southern California is that we've got more major research institutions in a very compact area than I can count. One of the downsides of living in Southern California is that they're all joined by freeways. Now, while a lot of these people can get together online in various spaces to discuss teaching resources and other pedagogical uses of technology, these spaces also don't have a way of bringing those teachers together, those educators together, and those students together in a more systematic level. What SCIWRITER would provide would be not only physical occasions where people could come together. We're talking about quarterly workshops and also an end-of-the-year conference. But it would also present to researchers and students and teachers in the Southern California area an online database of teaching materials, explanations of how to use those teaching materials, and also a place to announce recent developments that are coming out of these schools so we don't have this reduplication of efforts.
There are already a lot of top-down technology initiatives, but they have a tendency to only want to hear good things about using technology. One of the things that's different about SCIWRITER is we're creating a community for sharing. And that means sharing concerns, anxieties, and frustrations, as well as sharing success stories and best practices. Because we want to really listen to instructors. We have people who are coming from a lot of different communities and who are serving very diverse populations of writers. So they have a lot of legitimate concerns. They're worried about access, they're worried about privacy, they're worried about academic dishonesty, and sometimes they're even worried about copyright issues.
There are a lot of corporations out there that would like to take over this process and make it Microsoft University or Google University. That's not necessarily going to serve the needs of the students, but more importantly, it misses the spirit of this current moment in internet development, where there's an open source movement, where there's an idea of more user-created content that comes out of these freely available software. When I've spoken to high school teachers or community colleges teachers in the area, they've all expressed a high interest in how this technology can serve their students. Of course, their needs are very different than the ones that we have here at USC or that we might have at UC Irvine or UCLA. But at the same time, their students need to have this same kind of literacy when they graduate if they're going to be successful. If they're going to four-year colleges, if they're going to transfer later on, but more importantly, when they enter the workplace. We don't want to have this kind of knowledge or information gap. And so what they have asked me to do is to try to think with my colleagues about ways in which we can adapt this technology in sort of cost-effective terms, in thinking about that student who's out there who wants to use the technology but might not have had the benefit of the same kinds of resources, those resources that lead to a kind of advantage of literacy that is later on going to keep them, put them at a complete disadvantage in the workplace. So our biggest questions may involve not just what's the latest and newest use of this technology, but what are the ways in which the most number of students can benefit from them across the Southern California area.